Hi guys and welcome to the Pop Classroom. On today's lesson we're going to be discussing the lyrics for one of our favourite songs, and that is Royals by Lorde. Should we actually sing it?
No.
And we'll never be royals! I can't actually say that line without singing it in Lorde's.
I can't even when we were reading the lyrics, I was going like, I've never seen a diamond. I was trying not to, but you can't.
You actually look a bit like Lorde.
I do realise that today the hair is looking very Lorde-esque. That wasn't on purpose. This is just my hair.
Okay, so what we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to talk about the song meaning, we'll discuss what we think, our opinions of the overall message, then we're going to talk a bit about the lyrics and our analysis, we'll pick out a few of our favourite lines, talk about the language, then we're going to go into authorial intent, you know, what was Lorde trying to say with the song, and then we're going to summarise the whole thing. I've annotated my song lyrics, Lydia's scribbled all over hers. You can tell who's the English literature
Mine
student.
is colour-coded, okay?
So, let's have a look at the song meaning.
So for the first bit, we're just going to have a kind of a general discussion about what we think are the overarching themes of the song and what we think the overall message is.
So my ideas really were from the standpoint that it's a social critique in some senses, and I think it's Lorde commenting on the youth, particularly the millennials, and this idea that yes, we are connecting more, social connectivity, look at social media, we're talking to more and more people in more and more countries, but we're not really physically connecting with people. And I think a lot of what she's created, this world that she's talking about, you know, all these rap videos, the diamonds, you know, it's very much learning through television and through social media and through pop culture that is influencing our own aims and expectations of the youth. And what I think that then that creates is a sense of worry. Kids of nowadays don't want to have to worry about anything, but the world is full of worry, and because of pop culture they're not necessarily getting that.
I kind of had like a similar interpretation but slightly different, in the sense that I think the pop culture that you're talking about, I think they become the new aristocracy. So in a sense, in the olden days, the aristocracy were the height of society and they were all about that decadence and the conspicuous consumption. Yeah. And I think you definitely get that in this song, in the sense that all the things that she's talking about are things that could just as well be spoken about of the aristocracy in those days. As much as I do agree that it's a critique, I think it's kind of dances on the line between critique and awe, because although she is critiquing it, there is a sense, I think, that she is slightly drawn into it, and maybe against her wishes, but I do feel like she's slightly drawn into this world.
And I think that's the main question, you know, where do you stand on whether or not Lorde wants to be a part of this world or whether she's critiquing the world? So in this section, we are going to look at the lyrics. I think I want to talk mostly about Diamond in the Flesh.
I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. Should we do that for every line?
Yeah, why not? You had a really good idea about the technique of personification for this.
When you talk about something in the flesh, you normally talk about a person, so like, I've never met them in the flesh. And I think it's really interesting that she's talking about an object, because obviously a diamond doesn't have a flesh. And I guess that kind of relates with what you're talking about how we have this detachment and we experience things through materiality and objects in a sense of detachment rather than human interaction.
I really want to talk about I cut my teeth on wedding rings in the movies. So cut my teeth is actually a slang way of saying, you know, you learn your trade. You learn something new.
Right.
So I think it's really interesting to say I cut my teeth on wedding rings in the movies. So I think it's about learning a lot of your world and how to interact with movies. And I think this is one of those cases in which she's watched movies and she's learned a lot of her life. And I think that's the youth as well, that we watch a lot of TV instead of actually going out and experiencing things.
I actually didn't know that cut my teeth meant
really?
That. I was thinking, why is she putting these diamonds in her mouth? Like, does she really not know that much about them? It goes on your finger, not in your mouth.
She talks a lot about this idea of postcode envy as well. I think it's really interesting that the way that people divide themselves by postcodes as well. I mean, we're from London, and if you have an SW postcode, you know, you're from Chelsea. You know, you go on King's Road, you're posh. You're probably like from the programme Made in Chelsea. But this idea is there's no postcode envy if everyone lives in a crappy area.
In this verse in general as well, I find that she pretty much defines herself by what she isn't. So instead of defining herself by, you know, I am a working person, for example, she defines herself as, I'm a person who's never seen a diamond. You know, I am not proud of my address. Like, it's very much she's defining herself by what she is not. And I think to define yourself by what you aren't, you have to have a kind of knowledge of the thing that you are not.
And in this next section, I feel like I've been transported to a rap video.
Well, I do think she purposely does a lot of that. I mean, like tripping in the bathroom, tigers on a gold leash, like it's very stereotypical rap video. Again, like the harkening back to the kind of classical aristocracy in the sense of ball gowns. Now, see, I don't really think of ball gowns when I think of a rap video. If anything, I think of a lack of clothing when I'm thinking of a rap video. Ball gowns, you know, is that excessively decadent, the massive puffy dresses, and then the blood stains as well. Like, it's really interesting, the kind of seedy underbelly of that opulent life, and it really makes me think of Dangerous Liaisons, like the film, where it's all nice and cute on the surface, but underneath there's a lot of stabbing in the back and everyone is out to get each other. And I think that's really interesting that she exposes the reality that lies within it. We're always very concerned with those that live in the rich lifestyles. It's almost like we want to expose them, because like your life is so perfect, we want to find something in it that isn't, and we want to find the bloodstains under your ball gown.
As much as we want to make fun of their lifestyle and their rich lives, part of us kind of want to get in it.
And I think that's a central tension of this song, is that I disapprove of you, but there's part of me that is drawn to it almost against my will.
So let's have a look at the specific examples she's given in this song. I really focused on Cristal.
It's a clear like drink. Cristal and diamonds are judged by their clarity as well. It's a kind of irony in the fact that it's very clear, but there's also a lot of obscurity in their life, in the sense that it's not accessible to her, but also they have a kind of seedy underbelly.
Cristal has a really interesting story. So it became really popular with the Tsars in Russia, especially Alexander, who, up until that point, champagne had always been served in like a green bottle, wine. So obviously dark, you can't see into it. But he liked to serve it so he could see the bubbles, but he could also see if there was a bomb in his drink.
Which is brilliant. Yeah, a bit I really picked up on was diamonds on your timepiece, mainly because this was a conversation I had with my mum, which does have meanings. One day my mum came home and she said, come over here, look at my new watch. So I came and I was like, oh, that's a really, really pretty watch. That was lovely. But then I realised that it has no numbers on it. Like, so it's just little lines. And I was like, it's really pretty and all, but how the hell are you going to tell the time on that thing? Like, I can't see, I wouldn't be able to tell the time on it. And she said, oh, but it's not for telling the time, it's an accessory. That's completely against the whole point of having a watch. And, you know, she says, oh, I'll just look at my phone if I want the time. But it's the idea that you are favouring the look and the appearance, again, over actual functionality. And I think there's definitely a critique there of their excessiveness, which actually ignores function.
The line that really confused me was, we don't care, we aren't caught up in your love affair. I actually thought we are caught up in your love affair. To me, it sounds better. It makes more sense, because it definitely goes back to your idea about that you kind of want to be part of that world. So we are caught up in your love affair, especially if you're watching television, you get caught up in the lifestyles these people are leading, and you kind of try and, you know, vicariously live through those.
She says, I'm not caught up in your love affair, but she's written a whole like bridge and verse about their love affair, and I think it's very romanticised. So it's very interesting that she says we aren't caught up in it, but you can't fully detach from it.
A good example to compare this to is Mean Girls.
Yeah.
Lindsay Lohan starts off by trying to destroy the plastics, but then she ends up becoming part of them, and she actually turns into a plastic, and she personifies and represents everything that she hated in the beginning, but she got in and she got drunk on the power.
It's interesting that she says, you know, we'll never be royals, but then she says, let me be your ruler. It's very interesting that she uses phrases like Queen Bee, I want to be your ruler, because she's becoming them in a sense, and she's adopting part of them. So she can't completely reject them if she is adopting part of their attitude, and there will always be that hierarchy. And I think it's really interesting how she says, let me live that fantasy. So as much as she's saying, I'm not caught up in your love affair, I still want to live in this fantasy where I am the ruler. And I guess fantasy links with what you were saying about how we live very much through the media, through games, through films. There's a bit of a paradox there, because can you really live in a fantasy, because a fantasy isn't real?
As soon as a fantasy becomes real, it's not a fantasy anymore.
Exactly.
So is it your fantasy, and then you kind of get into reality, and reality is never the same as your fantasy anyway.
A line I think we both kind of had a bit of disagreement on was, we count our dollars on the train to the party.
When I think of count my dollars on the train, I think it's in stark contrast to what she's just spoken about. You know, if a rich person wants to go and buy a tiger and put it on a leash, you know, they hand over their credit card, they don't have to worry. I don't think Jay-Z buys a bottle of Cristal and, you know, counts his dollars.
Yeah.
You know, but her life is all about counting the dollars, and if you're having to count your money, it's almost like a worry versus wanting to live that extravagant lifestyle, and they know they can't do it.
I mean, first of all, like, I feel bad for her if she has to get on the train to the party, because we commute and we know the grief that is, so I'm sorry, Lorde. We count our dollars on the train to the party. She's already on the train and she's counting her money that she's going to spend that night on the train, so I took it more of a kind of, we'll wing it. Let's already go there and then we'll just see how we get on and see if we've got the money to get through the day. And in that sense, she is living as much on the edge as they are and living beyond her means in the same way that they are, just on a smaller scale.
And I also think it's really interesting, this idea of the wing it attitude. I think what's happened is again, as I was saying, you know, we're the youth that can have it all. We're told that we can have it, and sometimes humans are not very good with choice. The youth is really struggling with all that choice, and it's difficult for us then to find a way forward and, you know, a one journey.
We're done with the lyrics! So I think a really good place to begin is Lorde's age. Now, I'm sure I'm not alone in the fact that I thought she was older than she is. Yeah, not because of, like, she looks older or anything, just because of her maturity as a songwriter. But she is very much a part of the generation that we are referring to, the kind that were brought up with social media but didn't necessarily understand the implications of it. You know, we were the kind of guinea pig year. So I think her age is something that is really important to consider. You know, she's not an adult saying, oh, look at these kids nowadays. She's one of them. I think we should also talk about the composition of the song, because it's quite a minimalistic beat. Obviously it's got a lot of harmonies in the chorus with contrast with that minimalistic beat. And I think, and Lorde said this herself, that she wrote about the hip-hop world that's opulent but also bullshit. And I think that the song reflects that. You know, it's this idea of, she's talking about opulence and luxuriousness and all those rich things to a minimalistic beat. And it's this idea that if you take away all of that show on the surface, perhaps the world has no substance. I also think it's really interesting as well that she does mention royals, because I think royals is quite an old thing. I know there were a lot of time, you know, when we did worship kings as, you know, extensions of God or ordained by God, and now it's kind of the reverse. You know, for me growing up, it was very much a case of my royals were Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera and Justin Timberlake. If you look at it now, perhaps maybe it's Miley Cyrus, it's Selena Gomez, Demi Lovato, Justin Bieber, unfortunately. But I think it's interesting that she still wants to convey those royals, and I think she herself, like, if you take the name Lorde, you know, it's her trying to be royal at the end of the day, to have that title, and her fascination with that comes out. And I think it's in stark contrast again to you know, who we define as royal as this young generation. So that's it from us, guys. We actually had quite a lot of fun addressing this song, because I think it's right up our street and it is in line with our generation. This is just one way of looking at the song. There's a million ways you could review it, so please feel free to leave your comments in the comments box and we will aim to get back to all of those. We'd love to hear your opinions of the song. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, feel free to give us a like, subscribe for more content. It's been a pleasure having you, and until next time. Thanks for watching.